Okay, let's go into that because, as you know, a lot of the world is really awash in the truth around September 11th. We know that it was an inside job.
Correct.
But of course, who we look at are the front men. We look at the Bushes, the Cheneys, the Rumsfelds, what is that, Dov Zakheim from the Pentagon, etc., Mossad, and all of these folks that are involved in it. You're the first person to come out and say that the Catholic Church had anything to do with 9/11. Mm-hmm. What have you uncovered, or what are you looking at?
Okay, to understand 9/11, we have to understand the Kennedy assassination, for which reason I had to go into the entire history of the Jesuits, bring it up to the JFK assassination, and then ultimately 9/11. The JFK assassination was carried out by Cardinal Spellman. He controlled the American branch of the Knights of Malta. Key Knights of Malta in positions of power at that time were men like Henry Luce, controlling Time Life, who bought the Zapruder film for $150,000 and then rat-holed it till Garrison got a hold of it in the trial of Clay Shaw. Clay Shaw was a Knight of Malta, head of the international trade part in New Orleans, Martin New Orleans. You have William F. Buckley, who was a Knight of Malta, National Review, Firing Line, Fordham Intimate. We have Arthur DeLoach, who was the third in command of the FBI, Knight of Malta. He was the liaison between the FBI and the Warren Commission, and the personal dear friend of Lyndon Johnson. We have very powerful key Knights of Malta in positions that made this assassination effectual. The power base never changed.
Why, though? Why JFK?
Because JFK refused to uphold the temporal power of the Pope. He said in a ministerial conference in 1960 in Houston that no Pope will tell any American president, as long as he is going to be president, what to do. And that sealed his fate. They decided on his assassination before he was ever elected, because he refused to build the Spellies War in Vietnam, and on December 1st, 1963, he had plans for the invasion of Cuba to overthrow Fidel Castro, who was a Jesuit. He was going to remove the staging base for our coming invasion, of which Cuba has been designated as. And so Kennedy did many, many things. He took over. He wanted to make the civil rights movement non-communist, because he told King in a private conference to get rid of Stanley Levinson. And King refused to do it, and that Masonic Jew of New York continued to be involved in the Black Post civil rights movement, which had no real desire for the black men to excel. It was for the centralization of power in Washington and to have a communist movement that they could later blame on the Jews. Kennedy sought to undo all of this. And so with that, they brutally assassinated him in Dallas, and their power is so great that they could keep it covered up for all these years via the CFR, which the Archbishop controls. So that's the power base, never changed. With Cook, he covers it up. O'Connor, he covers it up. And now we have Egan. Egan, his man, Egan, of course, is a Knight of Malta. He has a very, very sinister voice, like Darth Vader, if you've ever heard him speak. And Egan, his man that was in charge of the intelligence community at the time of 9/11 was Knight of Malta, George J. Tenet, head of the CIA. He'd been educated by Jesuits at Georgetown University and School of Foreign Service. And so we have key Knights of Malta now involved in the bringing down the World Trade Center, and never once is any attention put upon them. Rather, the CIA controlling the Mossad, which is their creation, they have these Mossad agents dancing on top of their van when it happens to draw attention to the Jewish people so that ultimately they can blame the nation's Jews for what happened on 9/11. Mm-hmm. That's their plan, and they're going to do it. They have Wolfowitz in key places. They had Greenspan, the head of the Federal Reserve. But they never tell you about the Knights of Malta involved with the Federal Reserve Bank that I have listed in my book. They never tell you about James J. Rowley, whose brother Francis Rowley was a Jesuit, and James J. Rowley was the head of the Secret Service at the time of the Kennedy assassination. And, of course, as you know, the driver turned around and shot Kennedy in the head with a .45 simultaneously when Johnny Roselli stood up out of the storm sewer and shot Kennedy with a .45, and the slugs found on the other side of the curb. Nobody ever talks about the Knight of Malta connection to the 9/11 issue, and that needs to be done because Pataki is a knight, Giuliani is a knight. Giuliani was involved in 9/11, bringing that down, and George Bush's uncle, Prescott Bush Jr., is a Knight of Malta. And George Herbert Walker Bush, Bush 41, brings the Grand Master of the Knights of Malta, Andrew Bertie, to the White House in 1991. So our complete and total control by the Vatican through the Knights of Malta, ruling with the American hierarchy and controlling both political parties via the CFR, has rendered us unable to get to the truth. And Fox News Network is the worst.
Yes.
Rupert Murdoch is a knight of St. Gregory. He gave $10 million to help build Roger Mahony's Cathedral in Los Angeles there. His power over the press, as you know, is unbelievable. And Rupert Murdoch of Fox News Network and George Soros, who's supposed to be at the other extreme, are both brethren in the Council on Foreign Relations.
Yes.
They all work together.
Yes.
And we are disenfranchised.
Tell us about the Vatican's relationship to the Arab militias. You were talking about the PLO. Talk about how they are also using that other edge, or are they also using that other edge?
Oh, yes. The Vatican, remember after World War II, the Vatican had their Vatican Red Lines, and they helped top Nazis escape. And several of those Nazis went south and became involved with what later became the PLO, what later became the Egyptian Jihad. They became bodyguards for Egypt. Brunner, he goes to Syria. We have another one, Dirlewanger, he goes down to Egypt. He never was executed. So and he led some of the Einsatz group in Russia in killing the Jews. So these top Nazis went down, and they then began to start the continuation of Nazism under an Islam that they would control, specifically Wahhabi Islam.
So why are they playing then? I mean, if they were also at the settlement so who was fighting against then the Vatican and their rat lines and these Nazi foes by bringing Israel back into Palestine, back down to Jerusalem? Who was fighting against that?
Nobody.
So you're saying that the Pope had both of those lines going in, both supporting.
Correct. That's correct. I show in my book that during World War II, the Pope controlled FDR, Winston Churchill, Adolf Hitler, Joseph Stalin, Benito Mussolini, controlled them all simultaneously, along with David Ben-Gurion, Chaim Weizmann. He controlled them all, and the Jesuits dovetailed all what they did to bring about what happened. This is why, for example, the Masonic Jewish Labor Zionists helped to kill 476,000 Hungarian Jews, sending them to Auschwitz. If you ever read the book Perfidy by Ben Hecht, who was a Hollywood screenwriter, he shows you in that book that's exactly what happened. And Ben Hecht was hated by the ADL. The ADL bought up every book they could find and sought to destroy it. And Ben Hecht was murdered. That book is a very critical read for your listeners. Another one's called The Scared and the Doomed by Nuremberger. And he shows, and it's talk about the Jewish establishment versus the 6 million. Because the high-level Jews work for the Vatican. They sacrifice their own people to create the nation of Israel, which is nothing more than the kingdom of Jerusalem of the Dark Ages, when the Pope was the universal monarch of Europe, and his kingdom of Jerusalem was the place where he sought to set his throne, but the Muslim presence there prevented him.
So when we come back from this break, I want to ask you about just the founding of Israel, because it seems that most of those that are populated are Russian Jews, right? And so that is something we want to talk about when we get back on the lines. Eric Phelps, author of Vatican Assassins. Isn't it fascinating, you guys, to take this hierarchy back a few steps towards an intelligence service and towards an institution that has been around for centuries, far before these nation states were able to set themselves up, was the skull cap of the Pope, started by Constantine. On the lines, Eric Phelps, book Vatican Assassins.